good start, because I think my disclaimer is I work on, my name's Lucy Payne, I should probably have said that as well. I'm Lucy Payne, member of the Tech Spark team, and I work on the Tech for Growth project, which is referenced in the BaseKit report, highlighting all the challenges that our SME community, who are the backbone of our business community in the UK, face in terms of technology. And what we're going to do over the next half an hour, 45 minutes is address some of those challenges, look at the findings of the report, get feedback from our esteemed panel, and from yourself. So this is an interactive event. We've got officially half an hour for the panel discussion and 15 minutes for questions, but if you need to ask a question, do so, because in the moment it kind of loses energy. So let's take some of the things we like from online events, because in real life feels quite weird, doesn't it? I don't think Ash, we'd only ever met each other like that, hadn't we? So
I'm going to be throwing real life emojis out right now. That's what we're going to do.
You're going to throw things at me?
Take it from virtual to real life, yeah.
Now the question is, Antonio, do you think we need the microphone? Should we get those? I feel about that, because actually you're quite quiet, aren't you?
No, I can be loud if you want me to be loud.
You can be loud.
I can be really loud.
Crank
Yeah.
up a bit, yeah.
Yeah.
You'll think it's karaoke in a minute.
That's true. I heard there was a karaoke that they did it the other night. It's like pitch or karaoke, and that's pretty.
Actually, I'm going to pass. I know I'm loud, so I'm going to pass those two.
Hello.
Thank you. So before we get into the panel discussion, let's have a bit of a scene behind the logic behind the creation of support and research. There's some scary stats. Currently, the 5-year survival rate of new UK enterprises is 39.5%, and 96% of SMEs have less than 10 employees, which is one stat I thought was quite surprising. We talk about micro businesses. You think, that most people are larger than that, but actually it's a massive demographic within our business community. And everybody's going digital. I don't think that's going to be a shock to anybody in this room, but that can be really daunting to those micro businesses. And digital is the norm, and soon it'll be the only option. And I think that's really been compounded over the last couple of years, where people were getting along quite well, avoiding being online, were suddenly forced to. We saw that hugely with Tech for Growth, of people phoning us and saying, apparently I now need a website, do I need to sell things online, or people aren't coming to my shop, what do I do? That's an extreme example, but I feel for me COVID has hastened the conversation that a lot of those micro businesses were avoiding, and everybody on the panel and in this room wants to do something to support that evolution and growth, and to not mean that it's a reason that businesses fail. There's a reason that they hopefully thrive and are more robust and stable going forward, and we want to empower them. So the research that we're discussing, which you must download, it's really fantastic, was commissioned by BaseKit, conducted in August 2022, and has a representative sample of 529 micro businesses from loads of demographics, different sectors, really rich investigation into all flavours. There's no sort of consumption related retail, hospitality, there's agriculture, there's manufacturing, every flavour. And the sample side was business owners up to 5 employees, and all the fieldwork was taken between the 8th and 17th of August. It's fresh, hot off the press information we've got here. And some of the headline findings that we're going to be talking about is that 77% are unlikely to search for new tools in the next 12 months, digital tools. 39% don't know who to trust to find digital tools, and 26% don't have a website at all. So the question we've got today is, how do we champion tech democracy for the small business economy? And as a Tech for Growth, which is West of England Combined Authority project for the Growth Hub, we've been doing that since June 2020. We've spoken to hundreds of businesses who come to us as Tech Spark because they don't know what they don't know, and they don't know who to ask, and they don't know what good looks like. So that's the first theme we're going to explore, actually, is the gap between perception and reality of people's perceptions of technology and what it's actually going to do for their business. And I've asked the panel to introduce themselves as asking the questions. So, Jonathan, as you have a microphone there, I'm going to come to you. The gap, you deal with micro businesses a lot. What do they feel is the gap between perception and reality of the technology for them? Explain who you are first.
So, bit of background about me. I'm Jonathan Gordons. Here we go. Hello?
There we go.
I'll go on this one. Jonathan Gordon. I'm involved in 2 businesses. So I run an accounting practice called FD Works, and I'm also involved in a business called Dext. And we built and sold a product called Dext Precision. So it evolved out of the accounting practice, accelerated, and then was picked up by Dext 2.5 years ago. So mixture of backgrounds. So coming back to like the perception, I think for me the big bit is that for small businesses, it's that challenge in terms of it's difficult. They just don't know where to start, and so they'll sometimes get kind of caught up in what's important to them. So for a lot of businesses, what we find is that actually the bit they're really good at is the service they provide. So if you're a plumber, you're great at being a plumber, but you miss everything that you need beforehand. So in order to provide the services you do, you've got to do the sales and marketing. And then once you've provided your product afterwards, it's how do you do all the sales and billing. So I think for a lot of small businesses, it's just the vastness of what they do, and they just get focused on what they're an expert in. And actually to be a small business, to be successful, to be an entrepreneur, you've actually got to do far more than that. So I think that's one of the big challenges, is there's so much involved in being a small business, and they just get transfixed on what it is they do, and they forget about everything else. And that for me is a real limiting factor.
In a way, as they should, because you can always say to a business owner, do the thing you're best at, focus on the thing you're best at, and remove the other elements of it. And last time I done this for Simon, because it's a theme that goes throughout the report, isn't it? It's around that.
Yes.
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Simon. I'm CEO at BaseKit. We're the ones that commissioned this data. So at BaseKit, we make digital tools specifically for this micro business audience. So we're looking at businesses with less than 5 full-time employees. So we make a website builder, an e-commerce platform, a bookings platform, and soon to be a mini CRM as well. And we're really on a mission to democratize technology for this audience, for micro businesses, and to really help them kind of get on board, use technology to benefit themselves and their business. I think the other thing we see, and you can see that in some of the qualitative data in the report, is that some businesses just simply don't see a link between their businesses and technology. They just don't think they need it at all. And I think you also see a difference in the data between older business owners and younger business owners. So those that are slightly younger tend to actually embrace technology a bit more than those that are older, which I guess is to do with them having just been brought up with technology around them. So yeah, it's a difficult problem to solve, I think, for those that just don't see a reason to use technology in the first place.
And I think that's a key thing. I think seeing peer examples and seeing what it could do for them is a really core example, because they don't understand why you're getting that across, because they know it's going to be painful. And you've also got historically, building a website was very expensive, very difficult, very complex, very daunting.
I think some just don't believe how simple and quick and easy some of the digital tools around today can be. They see that, hey, invest half an hour of your time, and you'll get something really beneficial out of it. And it's only 20 quid a month, and they think, that's too good to be true. It can't be true, but actually, it is.
I think that leads nicely to Ian, actually, kind of the revolutionising of finance, because that's the one thing all small business owners generally, unless they're an accountant, don't enjoy them initially, is money. And there's been a revolution in that space.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Ian Phillips, I'm Head of Partner Sales at Xero. We offer accountancy software, cloud-based, for small businesses. And I think there's a load of diversity in this space. I think that at one end of the scale you have got a bunch of people that probably don't even view themselves as business owners. So when they look at technology, even if they are aware that it is available, they may see it as a cost that is coming out of their wages rather than an investment in their business itself. I guess one of the other things that we encounter reasonably frequently is that concept of not having time to sharpen the saw. So people are, and I think this is something that kind of Jonathan is alluding to, people are too busy running their business to find the time to figure out how to run their business better. But I guess the final point I would make on this topic is the role that regulation has to play. So we are seeing a mass change in the way that tax is regulated in the UK and the way that businesses have to report tax, and that's certainly driven a lot of the acceleration of change in our world. So when people are forced to adopt technology for regulatory reasons, whilst that is not necessarily the most palatable reason to do so, it's pretty compelling, and then it sets people off on a journey.
Carrot versus stick. I mean, I'm thinking very much carrot of what they could do with their businesses, but some of the comments were wonderful, weren't they, around non-technology adoption of I'm a gardener, I'm a holistic therapist, I don't need this, because they're just not seeing what value it could bring or how it could make their life easier. Go on, John.
So we've been using Xero for 10 years now. I think one of the things we found is that actually there's this transition between business owners used to think that it was, that I leave that for my accountant to do. And actually products like Xero have suddenly enabled the person doing the job to be able to use that at the time of interaction with the customer. So suddenly there is a bit of a flip in terms of no longer is it about me pushing the work to someone else, it's about me taking that work on. I think one of the other big things we see is actually where businesses are in their cycle. So actually it's very easy to pick up technology if you're starting out, because you haven't got this legacy of change. Where it becomes more difficult is when you've been doing something for, let's say, the last 5 or 10 years, that suddenly it feels very, very daunting to be able to suddenly then start thinking about, well, how do I go from my paper records across to this new world of working? And I think that starts to kind of blow people's minds a little bit. Whereas actually, those starting out, it's far easier to try and get it right from day one.
Retro sort of thing, it takes really hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm hoping the last couple of years have forced people to think about doing things and they've had to do it. I mean, Ash, I'm going to come to you because there's also trust. They're looking at all those technologies, these potentially not early adopters, we're having a general sort of message out there. Xero body was scary enough, looking at selling differently, engaging differently with clients. How do you build that trust?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, I'm Ash. I run a company called Different, which is basically a startup ecosystem like you find in this space, by subscription and therefore democratized for anyone regardless of location. Secondly, I want to thank you for creating this report, by the way, because it's saving loads of work. It's so good. Honestly, definitely check it out. It's intimidating to start a business, and I think we've already really lightly touched on it. But technology is one piece of the puzzle. Go higher level here. This space is a really good explanation of one of the gaps I think that exists in the fact that we celebrate companies based on specific growth metrics that aren't necessarily the metrics that we should. Well, they should be celebrated, of course, but that means that we're missing out celebrating other kinds of business, like the gardener that you mentioned, for example. You know, we're seeing reports based on people that have raised X amount of money that have hit certain size of teams. The size of team is kind of negligible, to be honest, because if you run a £10 million company, there's 2 of you rather than 200. Who's making more profit, you know, and therefore what is the definition of success? And I think that starts to create different benchmarks, actually stops people from starting in the first place, regardless of technology. If success is defined as somebody who's built $1 billion company, and you're sat there thinking, I just want to open a flower shop, that just is kind of also unjust, right? It's like not just a flower shop.
We're not celebrating business owners. Everyone's going to be an
Exactly.
entrepreneur.
Exactly.
And saying somebody runs a business, what does good look like for you? I spent a few years saying, I want to earn £2,000 a month, or I want to work 3 days a week. Celebrate that.
Amazing. You know, that subsequent question comes after the startup question, often, certainly in spaces like this, which is, how does it scale? And the answer is, well, it doesn't have to.
Yeah.
You know? The economy is propped up on 96% of companies being SMEs. And who is supplying for everything you see in this room is built and sold by somebody. Everything you wear, this microphone, the TV behind me, the curtains here. And I would argue that not all of them statistically would have been venture backed, and so we should be celebrating them just as much as the others. And that allows more democracy, and that enables more lower barrier to entry, and that enables more people to explore technology.
So Simon, comes to you because we're kind of still looking at the trust. We've identified that we've got a vast array of businesses to speak to who don't really know what they want or what they need. There's a lot who are in that uncomfortable zone. They've had the stick, they've adopted Xero, they've realised technology isn't absolutely terrifying, but that might have been really hard.
Yeah.
How do we reach the broad trust that there's more they could do?
Yeah, I guess, you know, micro businesses are such a diverse bunch that it's easy to fall into the trap of talking to them all in the same language, or trying to come up with a kind of one-size-fits-all language for them, which is very difficult to do. I guess the only common language that they have is outcome to their business. So talking about how you might save them time or make them more money, things like that, sounds obvious. But for this audience, it really is the only language that's really common across all of them. And I think then that can start to build trust if they start to see that you, as a provider of services or products, kind of understand them. And they have really unique challenges versus a company that might have 100 staff and be in a big office. These are people that are on their own or in a team of 2 or 3 people sometimes. So they've got very unique challenges and a unique way of looking at the world. So you need to really tap into that
That makes
in a narrative.
That
It makes it hard, of course it does.
And then
Yeah.
also they've got to look for help. Because one of the challenges they have as educators, they're all very busy running their business, and they've got the growth, and they've got the Federation of Small Businesses, they've got the university, they've got lots of support around them, but they're also terrible at looking out for support. Now, I'll go back to you, Jonathan, because one place they do come is to their accountant. There are services they have to have, and that was one of them in the report again. Trusted advisors, you're sitting there already. What do they come to you and ask?
So I think before we get there, I think there's one thing. Roles have changed within the business space. So if I go back to when I was younger, everyone looks to bank manager as being the trusted person in the kind of the business community, whereas their role has changed and they've chosen to change it by almost sort of saying, actually, who do we focus on? We're pushing the boundary for where you're going to have relationships with businesses that are turning over £2-5 million. Anyone below that, we're going to treat them as a retail customer. And I think that's really changed who you go to and who you have a conversation with, which is why the accountant has been able to kind of step in there. Also, the timescales of interactions are changing. So it used to be that you would only ever speak to your accountant once a year, because that's when you had to do your year-end accounts. That's changed with things like MTD, which has forced the change that you've got to do VAT returns on a quarterly basis. They've got to be submitted electronically, has enabled the accountant to get in front of business owners more and more. And with that's really going to pick up on the micro businesses that are going to have to start doing quarterly returns, and then an annual return to kind of shore everything up. That's going to force every business to start having to kind of submit things more electronically. So I think that's why the accounting is starting to be put more in front of small businesses. But I also wanted to pick up on one of the bits of trust. If you adopt technology, I think that it can reinforce the trust of a small business, and that can be something as simple as if you buy something online, you get a receipt straight away. It just forces the impression, the credibility of you as a small business up. Being able to look at your website and the quality of that website appear to be of a high standard gives you trust in the ideas of your kind of customers. So I think that there's an awful lot more that we should be doing to increase the trust in our own business, as well as who do we go to get the advice.
That's a really interesting angle, sort of flipping it. Because obviously they don't trust suppliers. Ash, I was going to ask you about, we're talking about some of the barriers to technology as well. Let's go to digital inequality, and people saying that they don't know what tools will help them. So there's too much out there, there's too noise. How do we address that?
It's tough.
I'm not saying I want an exact answer then.
No, it's tough. I mean, if I had the answer, I probably wouldn't be sat here. But it's tough. We talk about inequality, then we also have to talk about access to opportunities and resources. And obviously, there's a very real irony in the fact that the panel today is made up of a very consistent type of person, right? It's about as homogenous as it gets. And we already by default systemically have access to all the opportunities, generally speaking, that we need to get started. And so it's kind of weird having the answer come from me when it probably should come from somebody else. But speaking from my personal experience and what I see on behalf of our community, so we represent hundreds of founders, startups, creators, freelancers across the world, and they don't know what they need to know. I think you said it right at the start, right? That's the biggest challenge. They come to me and they ask, what is next? And actually, I don't call myself a coach. I would prefer advisor. There's a very clear, or very blurry but important difference between the two. And I think the important role of somebody like that who's an accountant or is just a senior business owner in the ecosystem, or somebody like me who's more of a glue that holds things together, is to ask the right questions at the right time and help other people figure that out. But the real challenge is finding them in the first place, right? Because I also do some angel investing alongside a VC firm called Ada Ventures, and their thesis wholly is about reaching underrepresented founders and overlooked markets. But the irony, ever since their first fund, so they just announced their second fund last week, ever since their first fund, is that the truly underrepresented founders and the truly overlooked markets don't know how to be found. I'm from Filton, which is 200 yards officially, my postcode, just outside of Bristol. I told my parents about the angel program, and they asked me if it was about pensions. And it's because there is no exposure to what VC and startup capital is. We have a physical curtain pulled across it. Yes, for noise reasons, I get that, but it's a very real metaphor of what's happening in the ecosystem. Once you're in, we all think that this is incredibly collaborative and open and helpful, and it really is in Bristol. Like, that's what it is. But there are people on the other side of that curtain that aren't here right now, and I think it's important that we break down those barriers, and then we can ask them, rather than having me on the panel, it's somebody who hasn't started yet. What do you need? And then plugging that
But all
down.
these micro businesses, we've all said, they're all busy cracking on. They're running their business. They're trying to balance life, work, money, time, and they don't know what they don't know. And we had people coming from Tech for Growth who their website developer maybe gone AWOL, taking the